Representative Mickelsen. The only thing we're going by the bylaws for is what's called out in our rules. The same with the state bylaws, we go what's called out in our rules. That's why we've done rules specifically for this meeting that we passed last time that we'll vote on tonight. So, since there's no provision in our rules, we don't have any provision to do proxy. And we certainly, it's not something that we have the ability to do on the eve of the meeting. That's something that, I mean, I sent when I sent the petition to Mr. Cook, I told him, it was in the cover letter. Article 20 is a new rule. As we previously solicited your input, your guidance, and your approval as to the procedures utilized to ensure a fair and complete balanced process. That was submitted to him, the same one on the previous hearing, and this is the one that he received on February 10th. And he didn't make any mention of it at the time. We could have put it in the rules at any time if that's something that you wanted, but it's not something we can do on the eve of the meeting. Does that answer your question?
It does. So I take it your ruling is that you're not going to allow this proxy for this meeting.
I sent him an email today and advised him to that, and I never heard back from him. I can give you a copy of the email if you would like.
I've seen a copy of the email.
Okay. He never responded when I told him that we didn't have it. We didn't have it.
No, and I understand. If that's the chair's ruling, I understand that.
Okay.
That being the case, I'd like to push a motion on the floor to ask for a vote of
You
this
can
committee.
make that part of your 5 minutes, okay?
It's out of order right now.
Yeah, it's out of order right now. But you're next on, unless anyone has any questions about what we're doing. Because we're not to the procedures yet, but you had several questions, and I told you that I would give you 5 minutes at this meeting to answer any questions and make any motions that you want, and so the time is now yours. And Rusty, if you'd start the timer, we'll go. Go ahead.
I think it's very important that, especially recognizing that Senator Cook is in Boise at this time, he did send a written note to you to afford for a proxy to be afforded to him in his absence. I don't want to go back over as far as, I think the members of this committee are well aware that Doyle and I had a very spirited exchange a couple weeks ago. And one of the things though that's very important is the individuals that have made the accusations from our previous discussion were allowed to vote. The accused, I believe, should also have that same right and privilege afforded to them, that they should also be able to vote in these proceedings. And while there is, as you say, no rule for that, I do distinctly remember you telling me, because we had no LD 32 bylaws, that we would fall back on those county rules. Ultimately, I understand your reasoning and I respect your decision, but I believe it's important that this entire committee has an opportunity to weigh in as far as whether they also believe that Mr. Cook, Senator Cook, should be afforded the right to have his proxy recognized. So for that reason, I would place a motion on the floor to ask this committee, in understanding, with all due respect to the chair, that his proxy be recognized for the purposes of us to continue business in this meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Discussion. Is there any discussion opposed to this motion?
Mr. Chairman, I think
Let me, before we start that, let me do a little bit of clarification.
And is this gonna take up my 5 minutes, so like point of order on that? So it'll take my 5 minutes, or we're gonna suspend that while we discuss this?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, we can pause it until we get back.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think that this motion is out of order at this point in the meeting. I think it should be held during the executive session of the meeting. it's not gonna, if we discuss it then, if we address it then, we'll be able to conduct the meeting in executive session. It's not gonna make a difference what the outcome is. I just think it's more appropriate in that part of the meeting.
Okay, I think I agree with you. I think that is out of order. It would be better at the beginning in executive session,
For that
to
motion.
make that motion to come up at that point. Do you have, so start your timer again. Do you have anything else?
I think that's completely wrong. We are not discussing any specific parts of the allegations. This is simply a matter of whether a man who's accused of what he's being accused of has a right to have his proxy recognized at this meeting.
Okay, but it's at the point that they were going to do voting. We're not doing voting in this portion of this, so we don't even use this proxy if we agree to use it. Once we get to where we could use proxy, then I think it's in order. So I'm sorry, anything else?
So you're not going to allow that to come to a vote then?
I'm gonna allow it to come to a vote at the beginning of our executive session. I'll let you remake the motion at the time.
And you believe it's out of order because?
I think it's not in the proper order. When we should take that up, it's at the beginning of our executive session, not at the beginning of this meeting. We're not doing any voting in this meeting, this portion of the meeting. If we were gonna do voting in this portion, then I would,
Well, based on your other discussions that you've had, as far as the bylaws, I can pretty much see the writing on the wall, but I am going to hand this out to each and every one of the members. And Jane, you're going to members of the CL.
For Lisa.
Sure, thank you.
Thanks.
Sorry, didn't mean to kick you there, Ben.
how much time we got left, Rusty?
1 minute, 40 seconds.
Oh, I got 1 minute and 40 seconds. Excellent. My comments are on this write-up. I don't believe that we already had a problem last time with some conflict of interest issues. We proceeded with those allegations. We didn't have some things put in place that should have.
Does the chair get a copy?
Oh, I'm sorry, Doyle. Absolutely.
Okay.
I would not want to deprive you of that.
Can we have a copy as well, or is that only for?
Certainly, I'll help you out with that, yeah, not a problem.
Thank
So since I've got very limited time amount, you all know that I had a problem as far as with a spouse of one of the petitioners sitting on the Special Investigative Committee. I won't rehash that. Grievance process documents have continued to change repeatedly, and I can certainly demonstrate to you the metadata that would show that. I am very concerned about the fact that we don't have any bylaws. I was told, and I do have a written email, that says we default to the Bonneville County Republican Central Committee minutes. Senator Cooks has been denied his proxy. I think that's also wrong and not in line. And then we look at number 3, most importantly. There were 4 individuals, and I will not name them here, but there were 4 individuals that signed the petition, 3 of which were PCOs, 1 of which was an APCO. I do not believe, based on the bylaws that talk about the filing of petitions, that it talks about PCOs. An APCO is not, for the purposes of filing a position, able to do that. Therefore, I believe that the number, the 20%, has not been met, and this entire proceeding should not continue, and these particular petitions should be dismissed so they can be refiled in the proper manner, in the right way. So I know my time has expired. Thank you very much.
So do you have a motion?
You just said I couldn't make a motion because
You
we
can't
had to
make a
wait till
motion on Senator Cook's voting, but if you have a motion on what you have here, because what you're trying to do is eliminate the whole meeting,
That's why the proxy vote was important, but you didn't allow for that to come to a vote. Now you're suggesting I should make a motion to dismiss these allegations, but without the benefit of Senator Cook's proxy, he cannot be heard. That is not fair, in my opinion.
Okay, then we'll take that, I agree with that, I made that ruling based on we weren't doing any voting in here. But if we are gonna do voting, that should be handled first.
Well, I also don't wanna make that motion before I believe Barbara had signed up to speak. I think that if we're gonna follow that particular part of the process, I would be more than happy to hear what she or any other members of the public have to say.
this portion of the meeting, we haven't opened it up to public input.
Understand that.
Until we do, no public will have an input. They're not part of this process.
I understand that, I'm just saying
Okay.
that's why I'm not right at that particular time, but that is my intent.
So if you have a motion, or, I mean, you want to go, if you have another motion, I'll go with the last motion first, and then we'll hear your motion, or we'll vote on your motion, if you have
You're
one.
getting me a little confused on this. You wanna go with which motion?
Well,
The one I haven't made yet, or the one that I made previously that you denied?
well, make the one that you're going to make, so that I know if we should vote on the other one first. If we're not gonna vote on this one, we don't need to vote on the other one. If we're going to vote on this one, if you're gonna make another motion for a vote, then we need to do the proxy vote first.
I think we should do the proxy vote.
Well, then
first.
make your motion and get it seconded, and then we'll move back to the previous motion, and then we'll come to this motion.
John, is that okay with you? I mean, I guess you're entitled to object again, but
I just, sure, whatever.
I mean, I'm just keeping it in the order that we need to have it in.
understood.
So do you have a motion?
I have the same motion that I made before, that I'd like to motion that we recognize Senator Cook's proxy so that he has a voice in this particular meeting. And that is my motion, that we recognize his proxy for the purposes of him being allowed to vote.
For the purposes of allowing to vote on your handout and your motion?
To vote on any proceedings that are that require a vote in these proceedings tonight.
Okay.
And
Thank
by
you.
the way, just so you know, and the rest of you, Senator Cook provided that his proxy would be held by Catherine Hitch.
I'd have to go back to the email. I thought he said it would be you.
He put Catherine on there first. If she was not able to be here, then I would be the second.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make that in full disclosure
You have
and
that
transparency.
In writing for me.
Yeah, not printed.
Mr. Chairman, could you please ask the visitors to not disrupt the meeting with their electronic devices and other things?
Yeah, if there's somebody, what are you referring to?
The flash.
No flash, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, no
Okay.
flashes.
Okay.
Okay, the point of clarification before we move on. You made the allegation that Senator Cook was in Boise. It needs to be thoroughly understood that this is a choice of Senator Cook. I asked him for dates to come for this hearing, and he told me that he was not going to come. I asked Senator, and you all have copies of that. I sent it out, the communications of the text message. Asked Representative Mickelsen if she was coming, help pick dates. When's this convenient for you? And she refused to come also. And so then it left just this body, so then I sent emails to this entire body to select dates that were convenient for this body. That's why we're meeting here, and that's why Senator Cook is here by his own free will and choice. He is not here. He come here. Okay, the second part of that is, see that he should have afford the opportunity and right to vote. Well, we can't get him here to even explain why he's not going to, why he can't be accountable for some of the things that he's done. We can't get him to communicate with us on and I told him from the very beginning that he could have whatever time he wanted, et cetera, but I don't feel like that it's appropriate for him, as an allegation that are against him, that where he doesn't even show up, but yet he could come and vote. I just think that was my cherry. You're making a motion to bury that, so we'll now turn time over to input. Those that are first, we'll let you take the floor for support of your motion.
I think
You've pretty much done that.
I've already made the point that I think that voting right should be afforded to any member
Okay,
that is a
we've
member
heard
of
that.
Local
Now, is there
32.
anyone that would like to discuss, about not, in opposition to the motion? Is there any discussion to that?
Mr. Chairman, point of inquiry.
Yes.
Did you say that proxy votes is part of our rules for this type of meetings, or is it not written anywhere?
Okay, we have rules for this hearing, and in the rules, I specified the things that were part of Bonneville County's bylaws that would be applicable to us. And that's what I put in the email to Mr. Colson, was that we would follow the rules as applicable per our rule.
Which means
which means really the only thing that is addresses in there, if I'm going on recollection, the only thing that's addressed is that we would, whatever Bonneville County recognized for precinct committeemen, that's who we would recognize. If you're not on the precinct committee, the Bonneville County Central Committee, you could not be on this committee. And if you were not an APCO, you could not be on this committee, because that's where they recognize it, and the APCO can vote in full place of any PCO with the exception of electing officers.
That's the only part of.
That's the only part
of
of
the
the
BCRCC bylaws that apply to this meeting.
And Mr. Chairman, by rule, you mean this rule, right?
Yeah, I sent this out to everybody,
Yes.
which is, I guess, I'm sorry that I didn't follow that. I sent this out to everyone. Everyone got a copy of this LD 32 special rule grievance process. These are the same rules that we voted on and approved for our last hearing, okay? And the only difference is at the top of it, in red letters, I put on there, and I did add one thing since I sent it to you, and I'll tell you what it is. At the top, I said that we would, I asked Representative Mickelsen and Senator Cook, or I told them that unless they objected, we wouldn't do phase one in the investigative committee. They had no objection to that. And so that's what was on the one I sent out to everybody. The only thing that I added was that the presentation would be by the signers of the allegation and or the SIC chair. So I put on SIC chair, I added that, because I've talked to Barb and I thought she would be most appropriate to present the allegations. And so I added that to, that's the only thing that's added to what I sent out to you and everyone reviewed.
So you were saying BCRC rules as applied to that?
As applied in this rule. This is the rule that governs our meeting. And we spent a lot of time negotiating on it with the legislators, and we spent a lot of time in our past meetings going over it. And so,
And so is there a part about representation in here?
representation of what?
Absentee.
What's that?
Absentee.
Absentee or just?
No, there's nothing in here about voting by proxy. But it is in here that the precinct committeemen will go by Bonneville County rules. The precinct committeemen and assistant precinct committeemen.
And the Bonneville County rules have a section for property.
No, I didn't say we would go by Bonneville County rules, I said well, let me find it.
I guess that was my interpretation
Do you know where that?
The rule, just to state what it is.
SIC membership. SIC will consist of 4 members elected by the LD 32 committee, PCOs and assistant PCOs in accordance with the Bonneville County Central Committee bylaws. That's PCOs. The members of the committee will be selected, now that's the entire committee, will be selected for known integrity, for good judgment, voting for LD 32 committee and the precinct committeeman may occur by nomination, secret ballot if requested, and that's in selecting that. So that's the only reference that I have to PCRC in the whole committee, yes.
A point of clarification, I guess. The Bonneville County Central Committee bylaws don't apply to legislative district committees.
That's correct.
Now, if this legislative district committee chooses to base some decisions on the bylaws of Bonneville County, they're free to do so. You could also do Ada County or any other county. I want to make sure that's clear. The second point, I think we're maybe confusing topics here. My understanding is when a member of a body is conflicted or the topic of a matter, that they usually recluse themselves or are asked to be reclused. And I think that's different than being absentee, or if they're not able to come, then it becomes a question of proxies or assistants. But to my eyes, this is a question of maybe a conflict where a member of the body would recluse themselves because they're conflicted on this topic.
Well, that was the discussion that I had with both Kevin and with Wendy Horman, was that I thought they agreed at the time. I mean, they didn't really have a problem with that. At that time, they were both gonna come to the committee and testify and give us the information as to why, how, you know, help us, to help teach us. But they changed their mind after a period of time, they decided not to come. Okay, so what we need is a motion to adopt these identical rules with the red lettering, to then move on, and I should have done this before.
We're still on this first one.
Well, yeah, but we don't have rules to go by. I should have took this up in the beginning before I turned the time over. So sorry about that. We need to have these rules approved to conduct the meeting.
Pretty sure.
What we did last time, the only thing really that we need to approve is the red lettering at the top.
I move to
saying in
approve
the
the rules
absence.
as amended.
I have second that.
Okay, is there any discussion on that? Okay, those in favor?
I might have a point of order on that, because I believe that if there's already been a motion on my, or I've motioned for whether we're going to allow Senator Cook's proxy vote, and it has been seconded, I understand, you're basically then ignoring my
No,
motion
no,
again
I'm-
for a second time.
I'm temporarily tabling it till we get past this. Okay.
I would argue with, in the absence of rules, or that you can't do something that means you can't. So I don't
That's right.
see
If we
why
don't have the rules, we
to.
can't conduct the meeting.
Well, no, you can conduct a meeting without rules. But you then adopt rules to limit yourself in how you.
Well, who would want to conduct the meeting without rules?
All
I guess
I'm
we
saying
probably could.
is I think we can,
Okay.
process.
We have a motion. Was there a second to the motion?
Yes.
Okay, there's moved and second, and then that was discussion against the motion?
Yeah, I think we should.
Okay,
probably
discussion
do so.
supporting the motion? Any more discussion against the motion?
Yes, I would like to add a few thoughts.
Okay.
The fact that red language was added at the top, I do have I find that to be, I don't understand how that could get put into the document as if it were already an approved thing. When you are essentially waiving the various phases of this, you're denying the individual's due process. It's no wonder that these legislators don't wanna come and talk to this committee, because the rules keep changing. It's like a moving target. And I know what you're reaching for,
What am
but
I reaching for?
you're trying to say, I've given them plenty of time and energy, and Doyle, I think you've bent over backwards to help them. I have absolutely no problem with that. You've done everything that you were supposed to do to get them to come here and talk with us. But my point is, when you have a moving target, and especially as something as important as rules and procedures, I mean, most of you know, when I spoke in the bylaws, one of the big things I was concerned about is we didn't have any procedural protections for both a situation like this, also for PCOs and members of the body. And those, while you may think that, oh, I'll never have to worry about it, what about the day when you do? And that's why it's so important that you have a structured and fair process. And I think, Doyle, you said it. You wanted to have a squeaky clean process. You wanted to make sure that the ground wasn't further damaged in this process. And I think,
I do
unfortunately,
wanna have,
it has.
I wanna have a clean process.
Mr. Chairman.
And I think, let me finish with this, but I think it's inappropriate for you to not understand the facts and make this kind of an allegation. This is what they were told in the letter, is the overall goal is to understand. Let me find it again. Okay, the Legislative District Committee, after fair consideration of the merits of any petition as well as the response by elected officials and the public, shall make a final determination of the merits of the petition. We will forego the investigative committee unless you request otherwise. They both had the opportunity for it. They didn't come last time for it. And so I didn't feel, and this committee's gotta make the decision, you know, if you guys wanna put this on hold and go do the investigative committee and they won't show up to that, we can do that. I mean, it's just, I'm doing everything I can to make it fair. And I don't like the insinuation that it's otherwise. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, we've been here for 40 minutes. I feel like Mr. Colson is being obstructionist and divisive, and there's evidence in his recent activities that that's his motive and that that's what he's trying to do. I feel like we need to either discuss that and determine whether he should be a member of this body, or I think we need to move on and carry out the meeting as it should be carried out.
Okay, let's move on.
We
with
need
this.
rules in order to carry out this meeting.
Let's move on with this motion. That's really what we're discussing, so we come back to that. So we've had the discussion. Those in favor that we adopt these rules as you read at the top, raise your hand. You wanna give a count? There's,
So the motion is to adopt the rules as
adopt the
been read.
rules.
8 in favor?
Those opposed, raise your hands. 4 against. Okay, the rules are adopted. Now we'll take up the.
Someone abstain?
I do.
Okay.
Okay, we'll now take up the motion of whether or not we go
Point of
again.
order, what was the vote total on that?
8 in favor, or 8, yeah, in favor, 3 opposed, Jane abstained.
Yeah,
Four
opposed.
There were 4 opposed.
Sorry. Tampa abstains.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may I do a point of information about Mr. Colson's procedural processes and the problems that he's having? I wrote something up because I'm so tired after months
Well, let's,
of, can I say,
let me get these 2 motions off the floor and then we
Okay.
can take that up.
all right,
The next motion is whether or not, that he moved, whether or not we accept a proxy vote by Senator Cook, a violation of our rules that we have adopted. And there's been discussion some, is there a discussion supporting the motion?
Whichever.
Go ahead.
So, I would make the case that, just like we did allow people who were the petitioners to vote, because they are PCO, so they're representing a group, that in the case of Kevin, he is a PCO. And so he has that right as a PCO to send a representative to represent that precinct. So, I do think it appropriate that he have some representation.
Okay, is there discussion opposed to the motion?
Mr. Chairman, in the BCRCC bylaws have been referenced several times. Under proxies, there are exclusions as to when they can be brought. Proxy votes are not allowed for BCRCC officer elections, state convention delegate elections, or nominations and appointments of public officials. There's obviously times when they're appropriate and times when they're not, and I personally don't think that this is an appropriate time for a proxy, especially when the individuals were given an opportunity to discuss that and try to incorporate that into the rules, and that it was brought at the 11th hour.
Okay, any discussion in favor?
I just think it does need to be decided, so this might be an opportunity to,
Okay,
To
any more discussion opposed, or supporting the motion,
since it's unclear.
or opposed to the motion?
So, if we go back to the first Article 20s, on all the stuff we did there, and now we're into this Article 20, and all the stuff that's happened here, we're in the multi-digits of how many times we've asked these legislators to come and be part of this process. Multi-digits, and they refuse. They keep refusing, and they're still refusing. And they're still not here, even after you've given them, let them set the agenda, and they're still not here. Where does it end? So, I'm totally against it.
Is there any more, discussion supporting the motion?
Just a point of clarification, John, I assume you're looking at the rules from BCRC on appointments. I'm just curious, when is it not allowed?
I just read it.
Can you read it slow? For me.
Officer elections, delegate, convention delegates, that kind of thing.
So, I guess, question, can someone appoint a representative for a regular BCRC meeting the day of?
Yes, they can, but they have to have a printed, they're supposed to be carrying a printed proxy,
I emailed
signed printed proxy.
to the second vice chair email.
I do have a copy of the email from Senator Cook. It came at 11:52 this morning. Said I will not be in attendance at the meeting. I'd like to have Catherine Hitch be my proxy vote. If for some reason Ms. Hitch is not in attendance, then please allow Michael Coulson to perform as my proxy. I wrote back to him at 2:01 and said, sorry, we don't have provisions for proxy voting, but you could send your APCO, ? Doyle. And then I heard no response.
Another part of the rule says that an APCO's right to vote when present at any given meeting shall supersede the right of another to cast a vote by virtue of it being granted a proxy vote. He had the opportunity to send an APCO. His APCO had the opportunity to attend.
Okay, any more discussion? Okay, so we're voting on whether or not we should allow proxy votings into this meeting. Those in favor, raise your hand. That we should allow it. So yes, 1, 2, 3, 4. Those opposed, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 to 3. Is that right?
4.
9 to 4. Okay.
Motion failed.
So motion fails. So now we take up the second motion. Do you need to add further to that motion, or do you still need to
What's
make
the
that
second
motion?
Not at this time, go ahead.
Okay. I'd like, to add a little bit, just from my perspective with the things that we're going through here, and I don't know the best way to approach it, and obviously I'm not the best at doing this kind of thing. I'm better at out in the field running a construction job. Years ago, there was a problem in Idaho where they would haul somebody in for polygamy. And everybody here was LDS. They would get them on the witness stand, or they'd get them in the jury box, and the jurors would say, hey, I think that's a bad law, we're not convicting them. And so they couldn't get any convictions. And so the powers to be in Boise changed the rules, and I think they made it law that Mormons didn't have even the right to vote. And that was taken off the books, I think, 20 years ago or so. This country is built and we operate under the rule of law. And the problem, that I kind of sense is that there's some opposition to this law. And I understand that completely, but there's a time and a place for that, and that's in the Central Committee at the rules changing the law. That's the time to oppose to the law. If you're opposed to the law, that's when you do it. But what we're here to do, we're doing our duty. They passed a rule. I got a petition, and when I get a petition, I'm supposed to, of over 20%, I'm supposed to send it to the legislators and ask them to come to this meeting, and we sit down and we have a special investigative committee, and we kind of hammer it out and understand both sides of it and try to make sure that we have exactly what the facts are. And that could go two ways, and it'd be very simple as, well, listen, that's the way I voted, and that's my religion, and if I'd vote that way again, and we'd probably understand it. Or they might say, I didn't understand the platform that way. Gosh, I'm gonna let that happen again. I mean, very simple, but we have to follow that process to get there. And that's the way we should be. This is for us to determine if there's a violation or if there's not. And that's what we need to focus on, is the allegations. Is there any basis to them? And if there isn't, let's talk about it. And if there is, let's talk about that, and then we make a decision. Arguing over this other stuff, I think, is not productive, and it's not beneficial. We're not here to determine the law itself.
Mr. Chairman, I do see merit in some of the questions, I understand what you're saying. I do think we should address them, you know, for sure, and not just dismiss them.
The merits of which,
Questions that are raised.
okay, we don't have even a motion on the floor.
Right, I do have one,
Do you have a motion?
or point of order. So, there is a question in the rule, in Rule 20, it was brought up that an APC, or that someone who was an APCO was a grievance filer. It does say in Rule 20 Appendix, or Part B for legislative districts, that at least 20% of its legislative district committee members shall call, you know, on, right? So that's the question, is what does it mean by members?
Okay, that's why Bonneville County, that's why I put that in there, that Bonneville County, we go by their procedures. Their procedures are, they solicit, they verify whether or not they're precinct committeemen, they vote them in, we accept them. They all just do the same, they have a procedure for the APCOs. If they have an APCO, we accept it here. It's that simple. That's all we've done. That's their procedure. If an APCO can sit in the place of a precinct committeeman, with the exceptions of those things that were listed, that's what we're going about.
Yeah. I mean, I see that you could interpret it two ways, really.
Okay.
What is member?
So do you have a motion?
No, sorry.
Okay. Is there any further on this subject? Carolyn, you had something you wanted to?
Yeah, I guess, Mr. Chairman, point of information, I recommend that Mr. Coulson cease and desist from again complaining about procedural processes. We see it again, procedure, invalid, process, or possible trials or bylaw. If he didn't like the means by which Article 20 was administered, he should have taken this up at the outset. This has been 3 months he's been talking about it, instead of wasting our time. This is, it's important, if you've got a problem, to help be a part of the solution, not just complain. At this juncture, we are at the later stages of Article 20 ruling, and it's too late to change our methods to accomplish the Article 20 goal of enforcing the party platform. We're here tonight to make decisions about LD 32 legislators whom we are calling into question about their conduct. We're not changing the means and manner we need to use to address the process. That is not, we cannot keep wasting our time with this kind of fanfare.
Okay. Mr. Jensen, you had something you wanted to say about this?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I have information that indicates that Mr. Coulson is working hard to unseat delegate or members of the BCRCC, including all of us. He's been meeting with the group. In fact, they've met tonight. They're doing everything in their power to subvert whatever it is that we're doing. Mr. Coulson is, there's been meetings with Stephanie Mickelsen. She's leading the meeting. And he's having conversations with her, and I'm not sure that's appropriate to be meeting with those individuals and then coming to this meeting.
I think they're two separate issues. I don't think. it should
I'm
be-
sorry, but this is precinct committee only. Okay, okay.
Well, what part of the agenda are we on?
We're still in the beginning because
In
we
the
haven't
public
done any-
agenda, she didn't sign up to comment.
So we haven't opened to public comment yet.
Issue there, so.
So anyone else have something before we move on?
I would like to say something because I feel that my character is being impugned.
Okay,
May I have the floor to address some of the comments by
quickly.
Carolyn and John? So the last time that I checked, it was not illegal in this country to associate with whomever you wanted to associate with. If for some reason you believe that I've committed some type of a crime or something that violates the US Constitution, I guess you can make those arguments. But the fact that if I choose to have a discussion with someone, for example, that you don't like, and you think I shouldn't be in this meeting because of that, I brought up last time at our first go around that The petitioners did not recuse themselves. They continued to vote on those motions. That's, obviously, they made a choice, in their ethical viewpoint, that was okay. I obviously didn't feel the same way, but that's the point of to everybody in this room. Look at what's just gone on here, what's been said. We are getting to the point now where we're demonizing each other because we don't necessarily have the same viewpoint. We don't have to have the same viewpoint, we shouldn't. America is built on a lot of diverse voices. We cannot and should not have one thought or one way of doing things. We need to be open to allow other ideas in, and that's part of the problem. So if you have a problem that I am somehow subverting this process, I completely disagree with that. And if you were one of the individuals that is accused in this, you would want to have every procedural protection afforded to you under whatever rules and laws that there are. When the rules and the laws, in my opinion, continue to change like a moving target, I completely understand why the legislators won't come in and talk with us. Folks, I agree with a lot of the things as Republicans that we agree on, but what the big thing that I don't agree upon is limiting one's ability to associate with who they want to, their free speech rights. I feel that that is something that is one of the most important rights that we have as Americans. And the fact that that's not seeming to be okay here, and somehow you're now calling my character in question because of who I'm talking to or not talking to, or if I don't agree with you, I'm somehow a bad person. I don't appreciate that. And John, you and I obviously don't agree on some things, but I still respect your right to associate with whomever you want to, talk to whomever you want to, and I would not impugn your character based on that. That would be a choice that you have as an American. And Carolyn, I'm sorry that you feel that that's the case, but obstructionist, I'm sorry, but I am obviously concerned about the process here. And if we don't have a solid process, you cannot and should not vote to convict anybody when your process is not it. You can do whatever you want. And my point, the last thing, and I'll shut up, Tumble. I made the initial motion I was going to make was, look, let's step back. I agree that the party has the right to do the platform enforcement. I'm just saying, let's do it right within the framework. My point was to dismiss these so that it could come back and be done correctly. We could clear up some of the things like Ben has brought up. Ask Chairman Regan for a ruling on what constitutes a member of the LD 32 committee. Leave yourself in a good spot to where somebody can't come back later and question it.
Okay,
you have your process.
Those may very,
do it
okay,
right.
you've had your
So
speech.
thank you.
Those may very well be appropriate, but it's not on the eve of this meeting. That's something you should have been coming up with at the last meeting or
What do you
sometime
think
before.
I did at the last meeting?
Well,
I
you
talked
didn't
about
say
process.
anything about a
Mr. Chair, we're out of order,
PAPCO,
man.
I'm sorry.
We're out of order. We're here to do business in
Yes.
legislative district 33, not to argue with each other.
Okay.
Personal
Two.
tax services.
Interesting.
So we're currently under Robert's Rules of Order, correct?
Yes.
In Robert's Rules of Order, under Rule 63, steps in fair disciplinary process, and that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a disciplinary process of these legislators. And if you go to 6331, and you get into, there's a lot of stuff in 63, but you go to 6331, and it reads clearly that, and just is dealing with Mr. Coulson's points that are well made. 6331. This is talking about the accusers. So there's a whole process in front of us. You give notice, you invite them to the meetings, you give them to the disciplinary, you put them on alert that this is happening. 6331. If the accused fails to appear for trial at the appointed time as directed, the trial proceeds without him.
Okay.
The only question I have for Mr. Coulson is, 4 months ago, why didn't you, while the process was getting started, why didn't you come and help us put the process together? You said before you work at
Okay,
the,
we need to-
you work at the INL, does the processes at the INL. Why didn't we do the process? Otherwise, we're going to keep talking about processes and procedures.
Okay.
We could have done all of this with him if he had been a part of it months ago.
And I'll, just one, and then we'll move on. I've got one statement is, I have bent over backwards and busted my hind end working with these legislators to come up with the process they're happy with.
Right.
And the end result of it was Mickelsen ain't coming no matter what we do, and Cook said he's not coming if we go into executive session to make a vote.
But why are we complaining about it constantly if they're
It's-
not willing to do something
they-
about it? And I'm
Anything
talking
they
more about
come up
Mr.
with,
Coulson.
I'm listened to
than
and
them.
I've dealt with it, so we'll now move on with the rest of the meeting.
Is there a motion on the table?
No, there's no motion. I'll turn the time over now to go over the allegations, and go through questions and answers about the allegations to, our SIC Chair, Barb Miller. Barb?
Oh, wow, okay.
You're on, Mark.
I don't know if
So
you-
I guess kind of just like how we did last time with the allegations, everybody got these, right? Everybody got these and read them and their stuff. Okay, so just out of the gate, are there any questions about it? Do you guys have any questions about what was in them or?
Yeah, time out, I'm sorry I got disrupted. This is George. John, if you hand these out to everybody. I'm first gonna discuss, Stephanie Mickelsen. This is a paper copy of every, it's the same thing you got in the email. And this is additional information that I've been sent in the last couple of days on the same subject.
This is Tennessee. Do you have any? Sure, you have more details.
There should have been 12. She has her own. I think I printed 15 of those. Did everyone,
I didn't get one.
you didn't get either one of them?
I got this one, but I didn't.
Not this one.
Sure.
Okay, sorry to delay you, Barb.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Do you have a copy for the press on those?
Yeah. Just the allegations were all out, but I've got the other ones. Do you have the allegations? You already have them.
I don't.
Do
Not
any of you guys
Tracy.
have any questions about them?
No, but you read that article without the allegations. You-
I don't have them.
And how would you know?
I have the one from the last session.
Does
I
anybody need
used
a
the
pen
same.
to make
How
notes?
would you know there was a text message that Cook wasn't coming?
That I received from the source.
Is this in addition to the packet?
Yeah.
Oh, then I don't have them either.
Oh, did you get one?
I have it on computer.
Okay.
If you need that.
This is the
Does
letter.
anybody need a pen
Okay.
to make notes or anything?
And I don't have
Oh,
it.
okay.
Yeah, the other one is Carolyn.
Okay.
Do we have some extra these?
Yeah, I don't have. Has everyone got the petition? Good.
So, did anybody have, in going through the allegations and all the attachments of it, did anybody have any questions that came up in their mind? Like, for example, if Stephanie Mickelsen were here, is there anything that you would want to ask her?
Well, I would ask her.
Okay, wait a sec, Ben, raise your hand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I think I see what she says. I honestly think it's a distortion. But, if she really wants to, I mean, she's playing a public game, basically. Meaning and saying, I care only about what the voters say and stuff like that. In other words, saying, I don't care about what the Republican Party is, so why are you a Republican? So the main question is, well, if you do wanna associate with this, what, are you planning on changing anything, or are you actually gonna do anything different? Or just maintain the same? So, just wanna know.
Right? I mean, that's so, it kinda like we're in the same boat as we were last time, right, Carolyn?
Yeah, I would ask her, why did you vote 13 times with the Dems last year on some major, major bills? And on the second page, why are you doing the same thing this year, especially as it relates to school choice and libraries? Why do you vote it down for our kids? I don't know. And you know, she might have a good reason. The fact that she says that she's the first step toward Nazi book burning, I'm not sure, but there are questions that she might be able to answer. I don't understand why she did this.
So yeah, so about the school choice, so I had some, in going through, I had some questions on it. In going through the packet, if you go to the podcast, right? Okay, and before we start, really, this whole issue, this whole process, and what we were here last time about, right? The whole integrity in affiliation, right? Where Stephanie Mickelsen said, I pledge, I promise to support the Republican platform. I promise that the values and ideals that are in that platform align with my values and ideals, right?
Except for.
Except for the Federal
Article
Reserve,
1, Section
except
4
for the
of the
Federal
Federal
Reserve, right?
Reserve.
Which is not an issue in any of these allegations, so that's not an issue, yes.
One little point you left off there, and as an also, and shall be evaluated. That's also in there, in the affiliation page, and shall be evaluated is what they agreed to.
Right, that she agreed to that. So my question before we start anything is, I have to ask you, what kind of society do we want to live in?
Right.
Right? Do we want to live in a society where somebody can promise anything and then not abide by that promise? Right? So their word means nothing. Right? Or do we, or one where just certain people are held to their promises? Not everybody, just certain people. Other people, it's okay. They can make a promise and not adhere to it, right? I mean, think about like your kids, right? Mom, you promised. They're always saying that to you, right? You promised. Promises are important, right? The things you say. And it's like, and none of us are getting out of here alive, right? We're all eventually gonna die, right? And it's like, whatever society you want to live in, you decide you want to live in, that's the society you're gonna live in, okay? Whether one where promises mean something, right? Or promises don't. Or they're selectively enforced, okay? So that's just, keep that in mind when you're making these decisions, okay? So school choice, look at the podcast, the transcript on the podcast, okay? He starts out, the interviewer, right? Right out of the gate, he lets the cat out of the bag. Because the whole discussion on school choice was the tax credit, right? And so he says right out of the bat to Stephanie Mickelsen, when you first ran for office, you talked about being a former art mom, and you came out very quickly in favor of supporting choice in schools in Idaho, but strongly against the idea of a voucher program or sending private dollars, or, public dollars to private institutions. He lets the cat out of the bag. A tax credit are private dollars. They are not public dollars, right? He lets the cat out of the bag, and then they spend the whole rest of the podcast trying to shove that cat back into the bag. Okay? It's like, they say repeatedly, both Kevin Cook and Stephanie Mickelsen repeatedly try to make the argument that a tax credit is public money. And the way that it becomes public money is because JFAC the legislature's already counting on it. We've already counted on getting that money from you, and we've already allocated it and spent it. So therefore, our reliance on getting it converts your money into our money. You see, that's the logic that they use. So it's like, are you trying to be deceptive when you make that? Because we all know that that's not true, right? That doesn't convert private money into public money. Somebody else's reliance or expectation on getting it, right? So then my question is, are you trying to be deceptive when you try to tell us that that's public money, or do you just really not understand that? You know, that's what I would ask them.
Or just completely trying to.
Well, right, are you trying to pull the wool over our eyes?
Well, what I mean
Right.
is just simply opposed to even having other options.
Exactly. Are we opposed to you spending your own money? Because we know better how to spend your own money, right? So that's what I'd like to ask her about. I'd say, okay, so do you really not understand that concept? Okay. They also talk about a lot on the school choice thing, about school choice, that we have school choice, right? And then when you look at it further in the podcast, it points out, well, you can go to a public school or you can go to a public charter school. That's your school choice.
That's your choice.
There's private schools.
But not in the funding stuff that they announced. She even admits that. It's like, well, you can go to a public school or you can go to a public charter school. That is considered school choice, okay?
Exactly.
What does the Idaho Republican platform say on that issue? Does anybody know?
The money follows the kids.
Or what
choice.
school choice is? Does the platform define school choice? Does anybody know?
It says a lot of things. about
It says it
education,
follows the kids,
not
that
just
it's,
school choice.
it's the parents'
It's
choice,
by a lot of ways.
Right. So
and it's
it-
market driven, so there's competition, that the inference is that there's competition. Excuse me
Okay.
for that collision.
It's because, right, okay, well, this is just kind of a question, it's like, do we have questions? What would we ask them if they were, okay, it says in, Article
Article
3,
3.
education, right, Section 3, we support all educational environments desired by parents, including public charter schools, public virtual charter schools, home schools, schooling at home, micro schools, learning pods, co-ops, private and parochial schools, and accountable public school systems.
Right.
So our platform says this, it tells you what school choice is, and that's what we support.
Well, and market driven means competition. And the public schools are competing with themselves here. There is
Well,
no.
public.
That's
You
right.
can go to a public school or a public charter school. It's like, you either get to go to this public school or that public school.
And the
It's like,
unions
and
are
that's
all
the choice.
involved in
You
That's
this.
have
the
a
choice
choice
you
to go to a private school, nobody stops you.
No, we're talking about
The funding, I know, but you can
Right.
go.
Of course you can go.
prioritize that
Yes,
in your
but that's,
budget.
Her point is the market,
I
they're
get
saying.
it, but.
Yeah,
right,
You
that
could
they're,
spend
no,
that.
they're
That's who we
saying
are.
they're in favor of school choice,
not everybody has a choice.
but not the platform school choice, the public or public school choice, right? And then it's like, and then there's the funding for it, right? So then, that's like, okay, we're all gonna go to a restaurant, okay? And we're all gonna pool our money, and we're gonna go to this restaurant. And I'm like, well, I'm vegan, I can't go to this restaurant, right? So I wanna take my money, and I wanna go to a restaurant that I can go to. Doesn't matter, you still have to pay for our restaurant. It's like that kind of argument. It's like, that's not a choice.
Yeah, Representative Mickelsen endorses maintaining a system of public free common schools. That was out of her mouth. That's what she wants, period. She does not want HB 447, tax credit. She doesn't want anything else.
And
So
and
you
she
could
does,
ask her that question.
and she does say that, right, and so I would ask her how she understands that requirement
Right.
of maintaining, that legislators have a duty, right, to provide free public schools, right, if that's what you choose.
I would
right?
have asked you,
So,
why aren't you adhering to the platform? That is not what we want, that is not what we are for.
well, there you go. There you go.
It's
So that's,
black and
is that wrong? Is that a wrong position to have?
No.
That I prefer the public schools over like a private school or a parochial school? Is that a wrong position to have? No, right? It's not a wrong position, but is that what our platform like supports or promotes? Is that what our platform promotes?
No.
No, our platform promotes that school choice is any school choice, that you should be able to take your money, and if you are taking your money to spend on your child at this other school, that you should then not have to pay that same amount over, to pay it twice, to
It
basically
doesn't
have
mean
to
it's
pay it
the
twice.
right bill though.
I
And it
understand
doesn't
that,
mean
that's,
it's good legislation.
I understand that,
It
we're
has-
not talking
it
about
has to do with
any bill though,
adherence
we're
to the
talking
platform,
about,
period.
right, we're
But she
talking
could not
about,
support it for other reasons. Like it's
Well,
not.
it's whatever.
That's why she should have come to this hearing
There
and
you
discussed
go,
it
Randy.
with us.
I'm
If we
talking
could have
about-
understood what she wanted, I'll guarantee you the majority of us would have said, okay, I get what you're saying. And we'd have probably given her a pass if we'd have been able to have a dialogue. But she refused to have a dialogue. In fact, she got in our face about it. I just don't,
so.
I mean,
So
she's-
there's a couple other issues that they have, right, with the tax credit. There were two other issues they had with the tax credit. One was, oversight, right, that we don't have oversight. Now, bear in mind, do you remember last time we were here with Wendy Gorman and the money that went to the universities, right? And what did Wendy say? Wendy said, well, that university gave me a letter.
Yeah, right.
That
they
university
meant
gave me
it.
a letter that said they're not spending that money on this. Did they not? Isn't that what she said?
that's what she said at the town hall.
Right? It's what she said at the town hall. It's also what she said in her written reply, right? She said, well, they gave me a letter that says they're not spending the money on DEI and on abortion stuff and on that, right?
You're saying that's the
So-
accountability level.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is oversight, this is good oversight, right? This is sufficient, a letter, right? But yet Kevin Cook and Stephanie Mickelsen say that a tax audit by the State Tax Commission
Right.
is not sufficient oversight. But a letter's good, that's sufficient oversight.
How does
Okay,
that, how does that
explain
apply
that.
to the platform?
Well,
Violation?
Well, exactly, well, because of the
It's
okay,
arguing
again,
the issue,
they're,
you know.
because they're arguing against the tax credit. They're saying you should not be able to have a tax credit and to take your money and put it towards where you want to take your child.
I understand that.
Where the platform says, yes, we should have that right? And she's saying, well, no, you can't have that right, you shouldn't have that right because we don't have enough oversight over it.
If I may summarize my opinion on that is, I honestly don't believe Stephanie really cares about the other issues. I think it's plainly she doesn't want school choice. And I think it's evidenced in things like decisions like that. You can cherry pick stuff to say, I don't want something because of this or that. But my opinion is she just simply I think she supports teachers' unions, is what it's really
Yeah.
about.
That's exactly it.
And that's why she does the way she does.
I would say, I think we need to be careful about,
Yes.
with respect, I think we need to be careful about what we discuss. We're not here to judge or speculate on what our legislators want or don't want. We're here to talk about, action.
We have to speculate, she's not here.
Well, we
We
can
have
only
to-
base on
Yeah,
what's been said,
She signed,
based on what's been said,
these are the bills she votes on.
We,
right?
we do have to
So,
speculate about some things without them here, but we're not here to discuss whether somebody, wants or doesn't want this or what they feel about things. The platform enforcement mechanism is about whether or not the platform is being adhered to in actions.
Well, you
Actions
can
of an
defer-
elected official.
With enough data, you can infer what she's doing.
Yeah, but what they want is irrelevant. We're talking about actions
Oh,
of an
again,
elected
if she were
official.
here, maybe she could tell
Okay,
us.
well, she has said that she's not gonna vote in favor of the tax credit, right,
No.
Rusty?
So the intent when we drafted the petition was to not go in between the fuzzy areas, but to go to specific stuff that they've said in print, they've said in radio interviews, they've said on TV. All this documentation you see here is just stuff they've said and done. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And
How
we're
they
just
vote.
pointing to something. We're not making anything up. You just go read it. Go read the podcast. Go look at the TV interviews. Go look at what they're saying. They're telling you what their positions are, and they're against the platform. And that's where we're coming. That the platform is what they've agreed to be bound by, and they're going against it in their own words. That's all we did in this document.
Right. Can I think just from my perspective as a PCO, looking at this, and as a mom with 4 kids in public school, and not in traditional schools, I make my own choice, but just because it fits the platform doesn't make it good legislation. So we're weighing everything to the platform, which should be something that's done, but then there are other criteria that matter as well. And I appreciate when it's looked at through other lenses,
What are
not just one.
So what are they?
Well, I've seen data on that legislation about how much funding, or how many people that would use it are actually in Ada County. And that it wouldn't even
Where-
benefit Bonneville County.
So,
And it would
Well, I
reduce a
disagree.
lot of funding for a lot of our public schools.
okay, so you're buying right into that
No, I do
argument
my own research. I don't
of,
think you need to put those words in my mouth.
no, but I mean, it's like you're buying into the argument of, okay,
You
if
did
that
research.
money's not going in, that it's gonna cause, the argument that she makes about Arizona, right? Did you read that?
No, I did not read that, but
Town
I've
hall.
sat through several town halls where I've heard this discussed at length in Madison County, in Bonneville County, and more of the rural counties. And I've heard the numbers of how those impacts would be for those schools.
So,
Have you been to
Wendy
Clark
Harmon.
County? Anybody been to Clark County lately? They can't even keep their school doors open. They're
Well-
trying so hard.
Why?
point of
They
inquiry.
would lose
Why?
money to keep those school doors open.
Wendy Horman's the head of JFAC, and she's the sponsor for the tax credit. She knows what she's doing here. She wouldn't do that to Bonneville County. She just wouldn't do it. Wendy's one of our,
This might be a right step towards a solution, but it doesn't mean that it's perfect just because it fits
no,
the
it should never be
platform.
perfect. It will never be perfect. But she is the sponsor, and she
Yeah, and I
knows
know
what
Wendy,
she's
and I
doing.
appreciate what she's doing.
You should
on this.
defer to her, not a town hall. She
Yeah.
knows what she's doing.
I've
Point of
said
order.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you.
she's-
We're debating legislation.
Okay,
yeah, I
know
don't
that
think
for-
we should be debating
No,
legislation.
right, so the issue is just that, the platform says that this is, that the platform, our view is that the money should follow the student. The tax credit seems to do that, okay? And Stephanie has come out and said, I'm not in favor of it, and I'm not gonna vote for it, right? And she's given reasons for it. Those were her reasons.
Point of inquiry.
Yes.
So, I get that we're reviewing these things, but these things we've already seen before. I'm trying to figure out where are we going to.
A lot of this you haven't seen. This is 2024 stuff.
This
Well,
is this.
This is
Okay,
what's
so-
on the other side.
Okay, so,
Turn it on the other side. This is how
Okay.
she's voting now.
So, this is
This is
this
new
year repeat,
Yeah,
basically.
this is new data.
Okay, that's why I'm like, it's all the same. Yeah.
okay, so in the allegations, right, there's, if you look at it, they kind of break down into 3 groups, right? One is the issue of their conduct, right, of how they responded to this committee, how they responded to the petitioners of the prior petition, right? Publishing their names, publishing their signatures and stuff, putting that kind of information out there. And one of the big arguments that they make, if you read their articles and stuff like that, is they say that legislators are responsible to their voters, right? They're accountable to their voters. And I don't disagree with that, right? I think we can all agree with that, okay? But I have 2 questions. And one of them is, okay, and I drew this picture. Here's my little picture. Okay, here's the voters in their legislative district, right? Okay, in the middle is you guys. You're in their district, you are voters, you are their voters, are you not? Right? And they say, well, we're accountable and responsible to all these people in the donut here, but we're not gonna come talk to you. So we're responsible to all the voters except you. Except you. That's one, okay?
When asked, she did not respond,
Exactly.
even regardless of position, but, I mean, obviously she knows the position.
Exactly. And then the second part is, okay, that may be as far as a general election, but we're talking about a private political party, a Republican Party, right? So it's like, as a Republican representative, right, when you go into a primary, it's like the primary decides who the party is going to put forth to represent them, to represent their values, their ideals, right? Should that nominee not be accountable to that Republican Party or that Republican platform? Yes, right? So yes, the general legislators should be generally accountable to their voters, but then the flip side of also is, should the party nominees not be accountable to the party? Should they not?
If they want endorsements,
So,
obvious.
Yeah,
so
Rusty.
as we go through this, and again, we just keep trying to look at the facts, you know, it's like dragging it, we just keep going back to the facts. So go to page 5, on the allegations here, and you'll see a Robert's Rules of Order in there. We all agree we're under Robert's Rules of Order. 6362, it's in the little indent in the center there. A society, in this case, we're a society under the Robert's Rules of Order, has the right to investigate the character of its members and of officers, and may be necessary to, as may be necessary to the enforcement of its own standards. Now, our own standards are our platforms and our rules. That's what we're talking about here. But neither society nor any member has the right to make public any information obtained through such investigation. If it becomes common knowledge within society, it may not be revealed to any persons outside the society. And you're going to see time and time and time again in these allegations where they took all this stuff and they just plastered it. They got a blowhorn and they put extra large batteries in and they cranked her to 10. They went nuts going against this rule. They were going exactly against the rules they've agreed to be bound by. All we're doing is following the rules. The rules say they can't do this. That's what we're talking about. Then it goes on and finalizes up. Has the right to make public any information through such an investigation. If common knowledge becomes within the society, it may not be revealed to any persons outside the society. Consequently, a trial must always be held in executive session. They don't want to do this. They don't like these rules. They want to create their own rules. So all this process you're watching, we keep dragging it back to the rules. We keep dragging it back to the rules. They keep trying to pull it off and say, well, I don't like those. I want to create my own rules. That's what's going on here. And then it finalizes. Consequently, a trial must always be held in executive session, as must be the introduction and consideration of resolutions leading up to the trial. We just keep going back to the rules. That's all we're doing, is going back to the rules and going back to what they said in public and how they slandered this committee. They slandered the rules, and they're not happy because they're not writing the rules and we're not following their rules.
John?
At the very end of this document, it talks of, there's an opinion piece by Legislator Mickelsen says it doesn't need to be this way. I know most Bonneville County wants us to focus on lowering taxes, improving our schools, and keeping our community safe. When we focus on those issues, we all win. How many of you, by raise of hand, agree with what she said?
Yeah.
I think we can all agree that,
Yeah.
that's good, right? Okay, so show me where Stephanie Mickelsen has voted to lower taxes. She's voted with the Democrats to increase spending
Yeah.
at almost every turn. Improving our schools. She called us book burners because we wanted to protect kindergartner kids and grade school kids from bad books, books that are pornographic. They're so bad that they couldn't even read the text of the book on the floor of the house. And she voted against it, and she called us Nazis and book burners. Okay? I don't know about the keeping our community safe, but those two things, to me, she's gone completely against the platform in both of those.
Well, actions speak louder than words, and if you read everything on these 2 pages, the front and the back, you'll see who she is. This is who she is. she says that and does something else. And I would like to talk to her.
I thought it was hilarious when she voted against the, what was it, the, like, extreme pedophiles being able to receive the death penalty. And then she was like, after the vote was completed, Mr. Chairman, I would like to switch my vote when she found that she was the,
She was the only one.
well, there were 2 Republicans with all the Democrats that were going against that, and then, and people on the legislative session, Mr. Crane asked, are we allowed to do that? You know? And especially since she was one of the ones that spoke in favor and opposed to the bill. You know, meaning, my point is, it seemed to me that she wasn't intent on, she only switched because she knew she would look bad.
So it's, you know, all you can go by is based on what she said. And like I said, it's like, yes, legislators need to be accountable to it, but it's like, she is a Republican representative. She's been held out by the party as a representative of the party. She has pledged to support the platform. And almost at every turn, it looks like, you know, and in a lot of instances, especially the ones that are brought up, she goes against it. She goes against it. And did you guys get that just today? The email? Right? Did you see this email from today? You guys all get, did you read it? Did you read what it says?
Just declining to sign.
Thank you for reaching out. I will not be signing any loyalty or affiliation pledges.
Oh, there you go.
And she said that in various different things. She says, I am not loyal to anything. No blind obedience to anything, right? I'm like, well, then how can she be a representative of the Republican Party or of the platform if she says, no, I have no loyalty? Can you believe her?
Well, essentially, Barb, she's not willing to sign a contract. Essentially.
Because then she might have to be held to it.
Correct.
Which is exactly what this is all about. Yes.
Representative Mickelsen has a long history of refusing to participate in any sort of meeting involving the Republican Party. She didn't come to the town hall last year. Every other legislator, including the ones from Caribou County, drove up here and participated in the town hall. Nick moderated it, asked the questions. They all participated, but Ms. Mickelsen. She refused to participate in the vetting last year.
Yes.
I mean, this has been an ongoing pattern since she's been in office, since she got elected.
And if I may comment.
Yeah.
So, not only do I see that she violates the platform, she doesn't seem to share very many Republican values. I also see that she seems to be a leader in stirring up within the party to division. That's another issue that I see that I don't.
Well, okay, so like the comments that she made on the library porn bill, right? Where she said,
Nazi.
if you do not agree with me, then
You're gonna be a
you
Nazi.
are a Nazi, right? Who's doing the name calling? You know, it's like, who's doing the name calling? Who's doing the gaslighting? I was talking to somebody the other day. I don't know how many of you saw the video about January 6th where the guy's breaking the window, right? And there's a journalist filming him. And the journalist is like, what are you doing? Stop that. And the guy turns around, threatens him with the thing that he's got, and he's like, stop it. Stop what you're doing. What did you just do? And the journalist is like, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything, right? And the guy keeps yelling at him and intimidating him and stuff. And eventually he's like, oh, maybe I did do something wrong. Did I do something wrong? Maybe, you know, that's called gaslighting, right? And that's when you flip it, and you become, yes, you become aggressive towards somebody else. It's the same thing like calling other people Nazis and stuff like that, because you don't agree with me. You're the Nazi, right? Because you don't agree with me.
I did get an email from Stephanie Mickelsen a while back, and she did say the same thing, that she was accountable only to her voters. So I responded to her and I said, as a PCO, I am a voter. And we proceeded a little back and forth on emails, and she said that the original affiliation was several years ago when she first ran. She said it has changed now, the platform. So my next email to her was, if it has changed, will you be agreeing to the new platform? What do you agree with? Don't you agree with? The conversation ended at that moment.
It's an excuse.
We're not saying that Stephanie Mickelsen can't be a legislator and representative. We're just saying she shouldn't be a Republican. She can be an independent or a Democrat or whatever she wants to be, but she shouldn't be a Republican because she's occupying a spot, holding on to what's supposed to be the platform, and she's not doing it. Let her run any office she wants. She has that right. Just like you mentioned earlier, she can go do that, but she should not be doing it holding a Republican position.
Yep. So, well, Cook's kind of basically, if we move on to Cook, Cook's basically the same issue, right? He's, cause he was right there with, he's always right there with Stephanie Mickelsen, right? They're like that.
The words in on it.
So, personal story, can I interject my 5-minute personal story?
Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah.
I took a class from a constitutional scholar one time, and he said with your marriage contract, would you be happy if your spouse only obeyed it 60, 50, 60, 70% of the time? I don't think so. You know who I'm talking about. I think you'd want them to obey it 100% of the time.
At least try, right?
Or at least explain why you couldn't.
Explain why you
Try,
didn't.
right?
Explain why there's no
Okay,
chip
Kevin
on the
Cook, did
collar.
anybody have any questions about the allegations on Kevin Cook or any of the attachments?
Is there a synopsis one or just go?
Kind of the same, again, it kind of groups into three areas. One being, you know, the conduct, being right in there with the doxing, with the holding other fellow Republican officers, right, up to the public for ridicule, right? Because that's what they did in all their post-register articles.
Yeah.
They're like, these are the bad people.
These are the bad ones.
Right, says,
We've done
they're,
nothing
they,
wrong.
wow, the BCRCC needs to do their homework and stuff. Makes a comment about Dorothy Moon also, did you read that part in there? Instead, Chairman Dorothy Moon has used consolidation as an excuse to force a presidential caucus. It will limit participation and cut tens of thousands of Idahoans out of the presidential nominating process. When it was he himself, right, and Stephanie Mickelsen, that was the legislators that got rid of the primary, the
Right.
presidential primary. Because of the mistakes they
They
made,
made some mistakes.
right? They made mistakes, we all make mistakes, but it's like, oh no, it's not my fault, I didn't do this, no. This is Dorothy Moon has used what does that even mean? Has
She
used
testified against the trailer bill that would have reinstated the primary. That specifically, I'm sure. I'm not here to speak for him or defend him, I'm just
Okay.
trying to add some context, because this is an echo chamber.
So, well, I just don't understand, why would he do that? It'll limit participation and cut tens of thousands of Idahoans out of the presidential nominating process, when if there was no presidential primary, 100%
Exactly.
would have been.
There would have been one.
It'd have been
When?
too late.
How?
No, there
Where?
would have been, they tried to reinstate it.
Right,
The
and-
trailer bill
and-
passed the Senate. And then it went to the House, and that's when Dorothy testified against it, as well as Maria and others. Because
But it didn't
nobody had
pass.
consulted them.
But it didn't pass though.
You can't
Because they
delete the
testified
primary and then
against
say
it.
you
The
didn't
party
give me the
stopped
primary I
it.
wanted, so
Opportunity
therefore
to
it's your
vote.
fault.
Yeah,
That's not an honest argument.
It was a
Right.
setup from the very
Right.
beginning to get rid of the presidential primary.
They
in
wanted to
March.
move
It
it
was
to May.
it was a consolidation of elections, to limit the amount of school bond elections and
I think they knew they couldn't pass that bill.
So don't you
They-
read the bill?
we can, I don't know if that's the intent of this
Told.
meeting, is to argue
I know.
all of
I'm,
this.
I'm just
I'm just
saying.
But it is, there is more context to
Deception
those
that happens.
statements.
But it's like, oh, he's disparaging other elected officials. Why? He does
There's a lot
that,
of
Stephanie,
disparaging of elected officials in this room.
Nicholson, well, we're
Including our
questioning,
fellow PCOs.
right, they're questioning because they're not here to talk to you.
Might
It's
be
like,
debating, I don't think you're disparaging this.
So, in reference material number 8 for Kevin Cook, he tells us, I believe in open primaries.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why would he support?
oh, yes, okay, so,
Page.
and I had a couple issues about that too, with
I
it.
don't-
So
I
at
would
the
like
town
to
hall,
hear
yes,
Jim
it's a
answer that,
transcript
because
of what he said at the town hall. And if you were there and listened to it, I sat and listened to it, and I was like, okay, what did he just say? I mean, yes, bottom line, I believe in open primaries. Bottom line is what he said.
I don't know if he meant ranked choice voting. I don't know,
He didn't say
I
it's
don't
not
know.
Ranked
about
choice and open
ranked choice.
primaries are two different
No,
things.
there's
You know
you
that
can
the
do
party
a.
No, they're two
sued.
different things, Catherine. Ranked choice
No,
voting,
the
open
primaries
primaries
is
are
the
two
open.
different things.
He said he was against ranked choice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
yes.
he
But he
did.
said,
I believe in open primaries.
He was trying to distinguish the two.
Right. He said I believe in open primaries.
there's a link
When-
on the electronic document that you can pull it up and watch it.
Right. When
I
our
was there.
platform, when the platform specifically says, right, that we believe primary elections in the Idaho Republican Party should be open to all people who are affiliated as Republicans, right? And to allow those who have no loyalty or allegiance to the Idaho Republican Party or its platform and resolutions to select our candidates is simply not proper. And the party sued to get the primaries closed. They had to sue to get that done, right? And here we have a Republican representative that says, well, I'm in favor of open primaries against the platform. I do
And
not agree with the
He
platform
didn't put that on his disclosure.
as an exception, right?
Oh.
I will say, I'm sorry, just the very last part of what he says, when he goes, I think there was a great wise man who said, I teach correct principles to govern yourselves, and I think that's where we will be. And it just made me think, oh, you know the thing. We all know that quote. We all know do we all know what he's talking about?
Oh,
He's
yes.
talking about Joseph Smith, who was a prophet, right? Who said, when he was asked, how do you govern and manage all these people? And he said, I teach them correct principles, and they govern themselves, is what he said. And I think that's what he was trying to say. But it's like it came out all upside down and backwards, and it just made me think, oh, you know the thing. And if you read some of his other words, read his words. I mean, just read it. And it's like, I think there's serious concern there as to his mental clarity. That's just me personally, but I mean, it's like, there's some concern there. Also, in some of the other things he said, if you read some of the stuff in the podcast, of what they were talking about. Oh, and did you all notice in the transcription of the podcast, it talks about the blame amendment?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yep, the blame amendment.
Instead of blaming.
Right, so Kevin Cook, same thing, falls into 3 areas. One is conduct. How does he treat his fellow elected Republican officers, 2 is school choice, where he stands with the upcoming vote that's gonna be on the tax credit and the Republican and the platform position on it. And then 3, on the issue of, again, he says the same thing that Stephanie Mickelsen says, I'm only accountable to my voters, nobody else. I'm not accountable to anybody else. Well, if you aren't, then you shouldn't be a Republican representative. If you're not accountable to the Republican Party and don't want to be the Republican Party nominee, then you shouldn't be. You know, if you only want to be responsible to voters, yeah, that's it.
And then open primaries. He's just super clear on open primaries.
Open
Oh,
primaries,
yeah,
right.
it says it
Just
several
right
times.
on the chart, clear.
We talked about it just a minute ago.
Yeah, so those were my thoughts on, I mean, those were some of the questions that I had, concerns that I had in reading through it. You know, anybody else, did anybody else have any questions with them or concerns when they were looking at it, or?
I do have some
Yeah.
concerns. If I were to, if he was here, I'd like to ask him how he thinks that affects the Republican Party. The last time we had a gubernatorial race, people from our party went out and gave pamphlets out. And sometimes people didn't agree with them, some of the pamphlets that went out, and some of them did. But if they were passed out, and when people want to know more about it, in fact, they wanted to know more about the party. At that time, we didn't have a lot of material together. We weren't as organized. We are now much more organized so that we can speak to them. So now they do call people. My PCO, Lisa, she actually had to answer questions from people calling in and asking her, what do these things mean? If they listen to any of these interviews, they're confused. Because we tell them normally to look at the platform here. You wanna know who we are? This is who we are. And when we don't do it, our representatives don't do it, then we get the kickback. We get the door slammed in our face. We're the people that have to eat shoe because they're not doing what they promised to do. All I could tell people is they signed a piece of paper that said that they were in agreement with the platform. So it's not, you know, it's not only just them, it's all of us. We wanna have basic principles to protect our families and our children and our community. And that's exactly what people want us to do. But if they can't even trust what our representatives do, that's why we're here today. That's why we're here, is that we have to make good our word. If they don't agree with it, it's fine, but they just can't be a Republican. We have rules. And we all try to live by those rules in our party. It's not just them. So I wanna know why they think that they can stray and still say that they're a Republican, because it reflects badly on all of us. We're not trying to make war with our neighbors, we're trying to make peace with them so that we as a people can stand up against injustices that are happening across our country, especially in Idaho, very quietly, but it's there.
One last thing.
Yeah.
So, I'm retired, but I worked for some large corporations over my tenure in 43 years. And I guess one of the biggest ones was Exxon. I worked for Exxon, one of the largest companies in the world. Worked for the Red Cross, another big one, you know, so a lot of stuff. But as an employee of those large corporations, we would go through evaluations every 6 months. Would be really standard. So they bring you in, you sit down, and they talk about your goals, they talk about where you're at, they talk about what you're on the right path. I need a course correction. Hey, we'd like you to do this a little bit more like that. And a lot of times that's where I end up getting a lot of bonuses. That's where I would get the check marks. You know, hey, you're doing good. You're exceeding expectations. You know, this is great. Or, hey, we'd like you to course correct here a little bit and go this way or that way. That's really what we're trying to do here with these legislators, is just bring them in and sit and talk to them and say, hey, look, you're working for us. And privately, you don't do those kind of evaluations in a public forum. And also, if there's a disciplinary part where somebody's really off track, you certainly don't do that in a public forum. You get them in confidential, you set them down, you say, look, here's where we're coming from on the platform, you tell us what, and you try to get a course correction so that you go forward as an employee. That's the proper way of dealing with disciplinary actions. And that's really what we're trying to do here. We're trying to have dialogue, and we can't get it. And they're just rogue off here and slinging all this stuff at us. And all we have left now is to go by the procedures and process.
And what they say, you know, like I said, they themselves say, they're not focusing on the platform or the Republican Party. They say, we're general legislators, we're just answerable to the voters, not to anybody. They themselves are identifying themselves as not Republican.
And in my eyes, that's a game. They know very darn well that they are members and should be accountable to the organization. They're
If
playing,
they were, then they would.
Right. They don't want to,
And they haven't had to.
because they don't want to, they are intentionally playing a game where they want to confuse the voter, in other words. And
Just don't pee in the pool, and you won't be here.
so I see it as a game. It's a game. That's what they're playing.
So,
Which is political, and that's the nature of this whole thing.
those are the, yes?
A point to be made would be that any insinuation or direct call that any meeting has been had in secret would be blatantly false. Everything's been extremely transparent throughout the entire process. Not to mention the media is in this room now. We feel that we want to be open and transparent with our legislators, and that is direct, and it is very well documented in both of these for the public and everyone to see.
So, should I do my couple-minute public comment now, really quick?
Yeah. You want me to take over the meeting?
Yep.
Is there any other questions for Barb?
Thank you, Barb.
Oh, I just kind of
Okay.
led your discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
may I recommend a point of privilege? Everybody take 10 minutes, 5 minutes, something. Stand
Hearing
up,
no
move
objection, the restroom, you gotta go all the way down the hall, take a right turn, and it's on your left. Right.
I just wanna get this done.
So 5 minutes? Or
Yeah.
10? What
Yeah,
do we
yeah,
have?
five
Two.
is fine.
Two.
Oh,
Two.
two.
Give
them
There's multiple stalls.
If you can see, if everybody can see in 2 minutes and 2 stalls, great.
Sure, just can't let.
Comment, two things, I'll try to be really quick. One was when Stephanie Mickelsen was running, there was a debate over in City Club. And my husband and I went to it and stuff. And we had, so Stephanie Mickelsen, Mickelsen Farms, Rigby Produce, they have various different entities, right? And during COVID and stuff, there were things called PPP loans, Payroll Protection Program loans, that were given out to companies and so that they could keep their employees, retain their employees and pay them and
I got
stuff.
one of those, they used it against me, I don't know why.
Okay, so the Mickelsons got in the neighborhood of around $7 million, right? And so I wanted to ask her about that because she was talking about water and about being prepared and stuff. And so I wanted to come up, ask her afterwards and say, so if you were so prepared, why did you need these loans? Right? It's like, why did you need that? These are farm workers, and most of them probably work outside, all this kind of stuff. And she just left. It's like we were chasing her down the hall to say, excuse me, could you, don't know us from Adam, we don't know her, never met, right? We're chasing her down, and she just books it away, and it like won't talk to us. So we're standing there then. So then some guy comes up to us and says, what did you want to ask her? And we're like, we wanted to ask her this question. He goes, well, she's having a bad moment and you have to show grace to her. And I thought, okay, she's running for office. It was Zach Miller. Turns out the guy's name was Zach Miller.
Oh, he's the president of Farm Bureau.
Correct, yeah, and he was with her that night and stuff. And he said, well, I came over here to answer your question and stuff. And I said, okay, great. So I started asking him about that, about the PPP loans and where does that money come from and so, and it's like, we got into this discussion and well, the money comes from the federal government and stuff, it's like, and so, and everything. So I said, oh, so it's welfare. So you are taking big welfare money, right? And he said, no. He says, no, it's not that at all. And I said, okay, so explain. He said, well, if we wouldn't have took it, somebody else would have took it. Was his justifications for taking it, for needing it. If we didn't take it, somebody else would. And then, well, everybody else was doing it. everybody else is doing it. So therefore that made it okay. And I thought, okay, she sent him over her as her representative to state her positions on this money. And me being a member of the Church of Jesus Christ, okay, and he tells me, well, everybody else was doing it, so therefore it was okay. And I thought, is that what we are supposed to be teaching our children? That, well, if everybody else does it, then it's okay. Do we not teach our children do the right thing, regardless of what? I mean, do you tell them the same thing with drugs or sex or anything else? Well, if everybody else is doing it, then it's okay, right? Well, everybody else is taking this public welfare, right? So therefore it's okay, right? And I thought when I was reading through the allegations, she talks about the $5,000 tax credit is welfare for the rich, she said. That was what she said. And in my mind, I'm like, you took $7 million, which, as we all know, okay, one of the biggest business expenses is your payroll, right? If you don't have to spend your own money on that, guess what that does to your own money? It frees up $7 million to do in the neighborhood, by the way. Don't count me on exact numbers, but we're talking millions, okay? That frees up a lot of money for you, doesn't it? And it's like, well, what did you spend that money on? And it's like, because she's concerned that you may get a $5,000 tax credit and may be spending that on buying a TV instead of actually buying educational material for your children. And that is welfare for the rich. And I just thought, isn't that rich? So that's my personal story. The other thing I wanted to bring up too in the public comment really quick about the whole procedure stuff. And we need to have procedure. Does anybody remember what happened to Ammon Bundy?
Yes.
Okay, whether you agree with his views or his personal situation, was he not a Republican? Was he not running as a Republican? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. How did he wind up as an independent? Does anybody remember?
The
They
chairman.
wouldn't have supported him as Republican in the party.
The chairman.
And what procedure did they go through? Does anybody remember?
Executive order, wasn't it, or something?
None.
No.
All it is the
Okay.
chairman who just simply said.
This is how the Republican Party operated prior to grassroots people that believe in law and order and that believe in a process like this came into the party and started getting involved. That's how it was run. Is that really how we want the party run? By fiat from the king or the dictator that says, I don't like you, I don't like your views, you are not a Republican, there's the door. Choice. It's we all have a choice, and we all can make that choice. Then, okay, thank you. That's my public comment.
Okay, the now public comment section. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to testify?
I would like to correct, Rigby Cody's got $2 million,
Okay.
and there's nothing under Mickelsen Farms. And I would encourage you to look at who in our county received those loans, the businesses, because you'd be surprised.
Really? Send me that information.
Yeah, it's all public information.
There are some people that didn't take those. They chose not to. Like us.
Okay. This hearing is now closed to the public. We'll enter our executive session, so we need to exclude anyone that's not here for the purposes of work. Or